in here. That's beginning of the bile ducts. Okay? So what's alk phos function in those canalicular membrane? To secrete bile. Alright? If I've got cholestasis, what are the receptors down there in the gut going to tell the liver? I'm not getting no bile. Give me more bile. So the liver's got bile in it. What's it going to try to do? Increases the transport enzyme. So it increases the levels of alk phos. Normal level will go out. Some will leak out normally. If you've got more in there, what's going to happen to your blood levels? They're going to go up. Okay? Now, alk phos is in numerous cells. It's in osteoblast, it's in the GI tract, any secretory cell has it. So how specific is it for cholestasis? Not that specific. So if all you have is alk phos elevation and you don't have increase in bilirubin, or you don't have an increase in the more more specific enzyme of GGT, which is gamma glutamyl transferase. You also see this gamma glutamyl transpeptidase, same thing. If you don't see corresponding increases in that, then that alk phos comes from somewhere else. What's going on in young animals as they're growing? Do you get a lot of bone development and turnover and stuff? Alk phos is very high in osteoblasts. So what do you think the normal level of alk phos in the blood of a young animal is going to be compared to an adult? It's going to be higher. Okay? GGT, gamma glutamyl transferase, that is also in secretory cells. It's found in the GI tract, but if you damage the GI tract, where does it go? It goes into the feces. It's very high in the proximal convoluted tubule, but if you damage the proximal convoluted tubule, where's it going to go? In the urine. It's a very sensitive test in the urine to determine proximal tubular damage. It's also very high in mammary epithelial cells, but where's it going to go? Into the milk. And if it's a suckling animal, what do you think its GGT levels are going to be compared to non-suckling animals? It's going to be higher. The only thing which will significantly elevate GGT in the blood is cholestasis. Okay? And that was my graduate PhD research work, so I can tell you that's true. I'm not taking somebody's word for that, that's true. Okay? All right. Does anybody know what I did my graduate research on? What animal? Woodchuck. How much wood could woodchuck chuck with wood, right? In other words, there's a virus, woodchuck hepatitis virus is one of the family of hepatitis B viruses. And basically what we were researching is trying to find serum indicators of hepatocellular neoplasia. And basically, GGT is very high in embryonic or undifferentiated liver cells. So when you have liver cancer, you'll get elevations of GGT in the blood. And that was true. The reason we were doing that is in Asian countries, particularly hepatitis B has a very high incidence, and 80% of the people that have hepatitis B as a young person will develop hepatocellular carcinoma. And so we were using it evaluating it as a serum marker, and it worked. Okay? But anyway, it's neither here nor there, all right? All right, now, functional hepatic mass. Why albumin? What's albumin got to do with functional hepatic mass? Yeah, where's your main source of albumin? The liver. Now, of course, if you have low albumin, you can't automatically say that's liver function, right? If you look down the urinalysis, could you have protein-losing nephropathy? But there's no protein in the urine. If you look at it, the globulin is normal. The albumin is below normal. That tells you it's probably hepatic insufficiency. Because if you have a protein-losing enteropathy, you lose both of them proportionally. Okay. Also, where's urea made? Where's urea made? In the liver. That's urea cycle, right? And don't tell me the urea cycle's in the kidney. I about strangled a couple of my juniors the other day when they said that. Urea cycle's in the liver. Remember, it takes up the ammonia and makes it into urea, right? So what do you think your blood urea levels are going to be if you have functional hepatic mass? It's going to be down. What about your ammonia levels? What can you set the animal up for? About hepatic encephalopathy. Well, it goes into CSF, okay? Glucose. What's the main organ responsible for maintaining normal blood glucose levels? Pancreas responds to high or low levels. Where can gluconeogenesis take place? In the liver. The liver is responsible for maintaining normal blood glucose levels. Okay? Now, did I ask you what species, if they have liver insufficiency, will develop hypoglycemia first? Huh? What is the major source of glucose for ruminant species? Do they absorb glucose from the gut, or do they absorb propionic acid from the gut that goes to the liver and the liver turns it into glucose? That one. What species will develop hypoglycemia last as far as liver insufficiency? Why the horse?
Because they have high amounts of
They have very high levels of glycogen in their muscle. That's why horse meat's sweet. Okay, now that can't go on forever. The muscle's not very efficient at releasing that as glucose, so it's going to be limited on that. Okay. All right. Also, we want to look at substances that are dependent on uptake and metabolic processing. As we say, bilirubin, your bile acids, ammonia, cholesterol. What's the major way we reduce blood cholesterol? Not our diet right now, but secreting to the liver. Okay? But, yes, sir.
I'm sorry, just to go back to the function of that.
Mm-hmm.
If this increase in albumin production, how soon would you start to see like?
Not an increase in albumin production, a decrease in albumin production. Okay. Now, we don't worry about too much liver function, because that's going to be regulated by normal excretory methods and stuff like that. We would worry about insufficient liver function. Okay? If we have too much albumin, what's the gut going to do? Excrete it. Okay. Okay, renal. What do we look at for glomerular disease for renal? What did we say? UN, creatinine, your proteins, right? Mainly albumin, right? Because they will go through it, right? All right, what about for your glomerular and tubular disease together? Acid-base parameters give us some information. And what we can measure, again, is we look at the urine pH, we also look at our total CO2, because our instruments can't measure bicarb directly unless we're using an acid-base instrument. Now about sodium, potassium. If my tubulars aren't working, what will my blood sodium usually be? What will my blood potassium usually be? Okay. Calcium. What's the kidney supposed to do with calcium? Keep it. What if it can't? It's going to go out. Okay. Phosphorus. How's the kidney handle phosphorus? Excreted where? Not in the urine. What part of the kidney? The glomerulus. Glomerulus is not working. What happens to blood phosphorus levels? Go up. Okay. And also various lipids and things supposed to be excreted from the tubules out, and also through the glomerulus. Okay. And again, do we ever want to evaluate the kidney with just looking at the blood, or do you want to look at the urinalysis also? Goes back. Okay. Respiratory system. Again, arterial blood gases, PO2, PCO2, acid-base parameters. But if we're going to do this, we have to do a blood gas panel. And that's going to involve a specific instrument to do that, all right? Pancreas. What's the mean about exocrine pancreatic insufficiency? What's not working? It's exocrine pancreas, right? Y'all made this more difficult than it really is, okay? So there are specific tests, and that there's the trypsinogen-like immunoreactivity or TLI test. And we'll get more of this when we talk about the pancreas, exocrine pancreas. But this is what's the source of trypsinogen? The exocrine pancreas. Now, a small amount leaks into the blood. Well, if the pancreas is not working, what's that going to do to that amount that's in the blood? You want to decrease it. So this is one of the clinical chemistries where low values mean something. Okay. Now, this is not a routine clinical chemistry test, but this is our second tier test to evaluate. Okay. Anybody know what Benterimide PABA test is? Benterimide PABA is something we feed orally, and chymotrypsin cleaves off the PABA, and that's absorbed into the blood. Where's chymotrypsin come from? The exocrine pancreas. So if I give a dog enterocyte papa and I don't see any papa coming into the blood, what can that tell me? It can tell me the pancreas isn't working. It can also tell us that we have malabsorption, but we use other tests to eliminate that. Okay, we'll know these in more detail when we get to that part of the lecture stuff. Now, endocrine pancreatic disease, what's the main thing we look at? Is glucose. Now we can measure insulin, but again, that is not a routine ClinPath panel, that is a special test. Okay. About the GI tract. If we have a protein-losing neuropathy, what are we going to see in the blood? Low albumin and low globulin, both. If we have diarrhea, you can look at our acid-base parameters, but what about our serum electrolytes? What are sodium? If we have diarrhea, what are your blood sodium, potassium, chloride going to be? They're going to be low. What if only your chloride and your potassium are low and your sodium is normal? Vomiting from follow us up. Why would your acid-base parameters be upset? Do we excrete bicarb in the proximal intestine? What are we supposed to do before it gets to the bottom of the proximal? Supposed to be absorbed, okay? If you got diarrhea, what's down? What about calcium? What's our major source of calcium? The diet. So if we have diarrhea or something, what's going to happen to our blood calcium levels? They're going to be low, okay? What about problems with absorptive function? Okay? In other words, if you have absorptive problems, will you have problems with basically your glucose, probably, possibly, if you're messing it up, but if we have problems with absorbing, our major source of cholesterol is the diet, right? So in other words, those things which are normally absorbed from the gut, if they're low in the blood, what does that tell you about the absorptive function going on down there? It's decreased, right? Also, what's folate? What is folate? B9, okay? Or B11 is one of those. Not B. The cobalt is B12. What's our body's source of folate? GI tract bacteria. What if I have an overgrowth of bacteria in the gut? What are my blood folate levels going to be? High. What's cobalamin? That's B12. What's our major source of B12? The diet. But what's waiting down there in our GI tract to get it? Bacteria. So in other words, if I have bacterial overgrowth, can that occur from pancreatic disorders and GI tract disorders? If we're not using the nutrients, what's going to be using it? The bacteria down there. And what do bacteria do when they get sufficiently fed? They multiply. So if I have high serum folate and low serum cobalamin, what does that tell me I also have? Bacterial overgrowth. Okay? Yes, sir?
Could you use those two to help figure out if you got, other than radiographs, did you see those changes, like if an animal had megacolon or anything like that?
You could, but the main thing you want to do it with is if they've got a pancreatic disorder, is that going to interfere with nutrients coming out of the gut? Is that going to cause bacterial overgrowth? We treat the pancreatic problem, but if we don't treat the bacterial overgrowth, can that just cause some continuous problems? And that's mainly what we look at for. Okay? And necrosis again. What's as far as the GI tract, what kind of muscle makes up the GI tract wall? Smooth muscle. And LDH would be elevated because it's in very high concentrations in smooth muscle. Okay? Now musculoskeletal. If it's striated muscle, what are the striated muscles in the body? Cardiac and your skeletal muscle, right? And so basically, remember AST and CK we use for that, right? For skeletal alone, we can also use ALK-Phos. In other words, we're talking about the skeleton, not the muscle, the bones. We can use ALK-Phos, calcium levels, and phosphorus levels. Okay? And you all should remember from endocrine, as far as the parathormone and all that stuff, all those change and stuff. The CNS, usually, serum is going to be normal, but the CK, when you have CNS damage, you'll get release of a lot of CK. And thankfully, it stays in the CSF and doesn't come into the blood, so we say, oh my heavens, we got skeletal muscle damage. Well, it's not, okay? So we can take CSF and measure it to help us out as far as that's concerned. So serum enzymology. Now, there's various mechanisms which can cause a change in our serum enzyme levels. It can be, as we say, increase in cellular permeability, like ALT and all that stuff in the liver can leak out. Also, cell death. If you kill the cells, anything going to stay in, it's all going to go out. It's all going to go out. Also, increase enzyme production. In other words, we've got stimulating because we've got a problem here that the animal body's trying to address, so it can increase the levels of it. Okay. Or obstruction of your normal excretory route, because they're usually excreted by the liver. You got cholestasis. Will that cause other enzyme elevations besides liver enzyme elevation? That type of thing. Or impaired circulation. In other words, you're not getting them metabolized because they're not going out through the kidney or this type of thing. So there's various mechanisms can cause an increase in your serum enzymology. And your normal serum enzyme activity is a balance between what is released into the blood and what's excreted from the blood, right? So you can increase this either by causing increased secretion or excretion into the blood, or by interfering with their excretory routes and stuff like that. In other words, you've got to do your physical exam and everything to know what could possibly be affecting this. All right, before you can interpret these things. Now, removal of the enzyme from serum by degradation and activation is very often done by the macrophage system or by excretion. In other words, it's either excreted out intact, or the enzyme undergoes half-life degradation, this type of thing, and the macrophages take care of it. Okay, so there's a balance between there. Now, cellular damage can result in an increased rate of enzyme release into the interstitial fluid and ultimately into the serum, right? What goes into the interstitial fluid, is that usually picked up by the serum? Yes, and so you see. So therefore, your enzyme can be a marker of cellular damage. And the magnitude of the release and the enzyme profile can give you information as to the organs that are involved and possibly how severe it is. Okay? In other words, if I have a 4-time increase in ALT in my dog's blood, another animal's got a 50 times increase, what do you think we can probably say that the second dog has more liver cell damage than the first dog? Usually, we've got to be a little careful with that. And this can tell you that, in other words, I tell you, if you look at a dog liver strange, it can release ALT. But it's not going to be the magnitude as if there's a lot of damage to it. You ever follow me on that? In other words, the magnitude of the elevation can indicate the severity of the problem. All right? Now, basically, your serum enzyme can be a useful marker of tissue injury as long as the etiological agent and resulting pathological process does not destroy the enzyme. In other words, if we have some enzymes, if we have a bacterial infection, do bacteria like to use some of those enzymes too? So let's say they're damaged in the organs causing the release, but you also have a septicemia that's using up the enzyme. So what does it look like? It's perfectly normal. There can't be anything going on. So you have to realize that that can happen to you also. And also you need to know that your various serum markers that we use to assess enzyme and organ integrity don't have a function in the serum. Okay? And so it's good that they don't, because if you have a particular function going on in the serum, could that be using up your enzymes? You know, that type of thing. So we have to realize that. Okay? Now, as far as enzymes of cellular metabolism, they're going to be usually very high in the cells. As long as the cells remain healthy, the membrane's intact, are they going to be detected in the blood that much? No. Now, it's going to be a low level because some comes out normally, but that much, okay? Now, if you've got very high intracellular enzymes, and now you're starting to see a very high elevation of that same enzyme in the serum, what does that tell you has happened to the integrity of the cell? It's compromised, okay? Now, membrane transfer enzymes. Again, these are usually, like we talked about, alphos and GGT, they're usually in low levels in normal serum. But if I'm getting a demand for increased secretory activity through those membranes, what's going to happen to those enzymes? They will be increased. If you increase them, you always have a normal amount coming out in the serum. What's it going to do when you have higher levels? It's going to increase the amount that's coming out of the serum. That's what we call inducible enzymes. Okay? Now, basically, your secretory enzymes are usually not secreted directly into the blood. They will enter the blood through diffusion and absorption from the organ sites of activity and or production. In other words, amylase and lipase. You have normal levels in the blood, right? Does that mean you have pancreatitis? No, it means they're excreted into the duct system and everything, and the blood's going to absorb some of them. So that's why you have a normal level of these. So just having some amylase and lipase in the blood doesn't mean you got a problem. It's if you have great increases in them, it tells you have a problem. Everybody follow me on that? In other words, there's normal ranges for amylase and lipase and other things as far as the blood is concerned. That doesn't mean that you got damage going on, that's why you got them in there. You have to look at the magnitude of the levels of those things before you make an interpretation. Everybody following that? That's why we say we have normal ranges for stuff, okay? Now, below normal levels, as far as serum enzymes are concerned, generally not considered to be pathological. Most ranges start at 0. We don't use negative numbers, okay? And so, but the trypsin ligand reactivity, which is the trypsinogen that's in the blood, that's, as I said, low levels of that mean you've got problems. But most of the time they don't. There are some cases, as we say. Now, as far as the ALT and AST, they require peroxidol 5'-phosphate, which is an active item of active metabolite of vitamin B6. So if I have continuously low levels of that, could that mean I have a B6 deficiency? But again, when we say continuously, it has to be over several weeks. And what does that mean? We're going to take one level and then not take another level? But we have to take multiple samples of that to prove that. But what's the best way to determine if you have B6 deficiency? Measure your blood levels of B6. You can do that, okay? But that's a pretty expensive procedure to do, okay? Now, as far as